Our next step in the process is to start to actually work with the line work now that we have. We've inserted it from AutoCAD, and you can see that it is all one gigantic group. What we're going to do is we're going to actually rotate the sections into place onto the plan view so that we can model directly off of the line work. To do this, we need to separate the groups and recreate new groups. I'm going to select the line work, and then I'm going to select Explode. And we're going to have to do this a handful of times to make sure that all of the objects get exploded. One thing that's important to do is remember when your cursor has to be hovered directly over the line work in order to get it to explode. So once we get far enough, now you can see my explode button is grayed out. It means that all of the geometry in the background is individual line work and items. So I can select them and highlight them as individual entities. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but we're going to regroup them, but just regroup them in smaller groups. I'm going to navigate my view a little bit so that I can isolate the geometry a little bit more. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to select each of the sections. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to make those a group. I'm going to do the same thing to the next section and I'm going to make that a group. I'm going to pan over a little bit so it's easier. And I'm going to make this section a group. So the nice thing about that now is what I can do is separate the sections from the floor plan and I can move the geometry wherever I need to. So I know that this section comes right through the building. It's actually coming through right in this area right here. So I'm going to take this section, which is cut through here. We can see the downward slope that happens on the front edge of the deck. And I'm going to move that section in a little closer to where it belongs. The next thing we're going to do is rotate the geometry so that it lines up. So once I've selected my group in my section, I'm going to click the rotate tool and notice it brings up a little protractor. That protractor allows me to set and change the rotation. I'm going to left click on the geometry somewhere, and it's not too picky where, and then I'm going to line up with my green axis and left click again. That locks down the base rotation. Now I need to select my next level of rotation. For this project, we want this to rotate 90 degrees. You can see the angle in the bottom right says 66.9. I'm going to just simply type in 90 and hit enter. It's usually a pretty good idea to use type-ins for your rotation angles. That allows you to be much more accurate. If you're a little bit off on your angle, it may look straight, but if it's not, it'll wreck your whole model. The next thing I want to do is I want to rotate these vertically. The command and the process are the same. I'm going to give myself a little reference cube that is not part of the model in the corner so that I can line up my protractor. I'm going to select the geometry again, and this time we know that this is the roof on the right side. We want that to rotate upward so that we can attach it to the plan. If we think about the rotation angle, we want to rotate it around this green axis. So that helps us think about what we're doing a little bit. I'm going to click the rotation tool, and I'm going to come over here and notice I hover around my box. If I'm flat, I'm on the blue axis, or rotating in the Z direction. Here I'm rotating around the green axis, and here I would be rotating around the red axis. So I'm going to hover on the green axis, and we're not picky about where our base is. So I'm going to left click at the bottom of the base, and then I'm going to left click again to set my base rotation, just like traditional rotation. Now as I rotate, you can see I'm rotating the section vertically. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to move my cursor generally in the direction and then type in 90 and hit enter. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other section. This time, this section, the roof here needs to rotate up. So I'll use the rotation tool and use the red axis. This time we'll be rotating around the red axis. So same type of thing. I'm going to set my base rotation, left click, and then left click again to set the angle, and then you can see my line work starting to rotate up. I'm going to type in 90 degrees, and I now have my sections rotated vertically. Now we're going to simply zoom in and line them up so that they match the drawings. I'm going to use this very back column as my reference point and zoom in to the plan view. And fortunately, that column does actually line up. I can zoom back out now, and I can pick the other section, and I'll do the same thing. I'm going to line this one up with the other edge. And again, the drawing was drawn fairly well. We can see that the column does line up. And once I'm done with that, I can, if I'd like to, delete my little reference box. And I just selected it and hit the delete button. So right now we'll go through and we're going to save that file. We'll do File, and we'll save it as just a line work drawing. So I'm going to go back to my file, and we will save it as, I'm going to call it Stall Line Work, and hit Save. And our next step will be to create a massing model.